Hello there! Welcome to Duncan Egg Bricks, and to a video that for some of you might feel a little bit like deja vu. In front of me here I've got set 75292, the Razor Crest, sometimes known as the Mandalorian Bounty Hunter Transport in and around Europe. Don't ask, trademark disputes all over the place. And I did previously review this set. Not only did I review it, I also did a video about some mods that I'd made to it. Those mods have been undone, so this is how the set comes when you get it out of the box. I have removed the minifigs, but everything else is the same. And what I'm going to try today is something that I've not actually done before, and that's buying instructions and then building a custom model, or in this case, a customized model, so a modded version of this original set using the same basic structure and a lot of the same pieces, but with a whole bunch of new pieces, which I will bring into frame here. So there's an awful lot of pieces here. They're not all going to completely fit. So yeah, that's about £40 worth of new pieces, in addition to a whole load that I already had in my collection. So it does turn out quite expensive. These instructions are from Brickvault.toys. Brickvault is really well known. I don't need to give them any publicity. This video isn't sponsored or anything like that, but they did come out with a set of instructions for modifying this set, and with the UCS Razor Crest rumoured to be coming out fairly soon, I thought I'd take another look back at my own version of the Razor Crest and give it a bit of sprucing up and make it something that I can really be proud to display, because I definitely won't be getting that UCS version. So I am going to go ahead and pretty much take apart this set, and then I'm going to use those instructions that I got to build up the new version. So wish me luck, and I'll see you in a second when it's all finished. It may only have been a couple of seconds for you guys, but I actually recorded the first part of this video back in July. It didn't actually take me this long to make this version of the Razor Crest, don't worry, but I have been fairly busy in the intervening time. I've started a new job, and as you can see, I've moved my desk into its new position by the window, so things look a little different. But anyway, let's actually get on to the modified set in question. So as I kind of said in the opening bit, these instructions are definitely a modification rather than a pure mock. The main structure of the set is very, very similar to the original. It probably makes more sense to completely take the original model apart and then rebuild it from the ground up. I actually chose to do it in a way more difficult way because I'm a sucker for annoying myself, and partially took it apart before adding new bits to it, but the end result still is the same. So as you can see, there are quite a lot of differences on this version. Perhaps the most noticeable, or maybe the two different most noticeable things, are the engines, which are much bigger, and also the nose. They're the kind of major changes. So the engines, instead of using those sort of 6x3 half cylinder pieces, they actually now use the 4x4 quarter cylinder pieces. So they've got a diameter of 8 studs now rather than 6, so that increases them in size quite a lot. And they've got this different construction using these slopes, and actually using some clipped pieces. Just pulling that off, I'll show you that in a minute then. Just using some clipped pieces to get those angles there. And then yeah, the overall engines are much bigger. They actually reuse the parts that were on the front on the back. They can now freely spin, and they interestingly do actually use those same gunmetal grey barrels to be the rear engine nozzles. So you can see the kind of difference. The main structure of the original engines was narrower than this, and the new one is much bigger. I have to say overall it was a very satisfying build to put together. The instructions were a little bit more difficult to follow, I would have to say, just because they are custom ones, and not all the connections are as absolutely rock solid, this being one that I'll mention in a minute. But the end result is very nice and solid and has a good amount of detail. The other thing I mentioned was the front just here, and this is a much more substantial build. It actually uses slopes on hinges there, so you can see I can actually move these like that. But once they are sloped in, they form a perfect continuation with some of these bigger 2x3 slopes on the side there. And that just means that this front section The confusion with the previous version was that the canopy itself is 6 wide, and then the main body of the ship at the front was 8 wide, so that didn't quite match up, which meant that you had quite a flat front, which was wider than the canopy, and that looked very strange. I did come up with my own mods for that, which mainly involved narrowing that front, but then there was a kind of step, whereas here you can see it curves out gradually and goes to that 8. It's not actually perfectly accurate as to how the ship looks in universe, but I think for a modded Lego model, it's a big improvement. Inside, you can see there's been a little bit more detail added to the cockpit. We've got a little blue dot there, which I think is representing a hologram. You've got an actual lever here for Grogu to take the ball off the end of and play with. You've got multiple control panels, still only 2 seats inside, although there probably is room to add additional ones. And generally, everything's just been a bit streamlined. You'll probably notice that there's a lot more light bluish grey in this version, so a lot of the pieces that were dark bluish grey or other colours have been changed, and that just makes the whole thing look a little bit smoother overall. And in fact, some things that were dark bluish grey have now, black, have been changed to dark bluish grey, such as these grills along the back here. So overall, it's just making things a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more perfect. And you know, if this were a regular Lego set, I don't think it would fly because, pun intended, but I don't think it would pass the quality control because it is a little bit trickier to put together, but the overall effect is really, really nice. I'll leave the canopy off just for a moment there while I flip it upside down. Just show you one of the other additions is the paneling here. So in the stock model, this space is actually empty, but this has a nice construction to fit this plate in here. It just rounds everything off. Obviously, there are places where there could have been some extra detail, such as on the sides here, or possibly tiling this piece off, which they haven't been done. But I really don't think it's the end of the world, because I think it's still a massive improvement, and it still uses you know, a large amount of stuff from the original Razor Crest set. Another thing that it improves on is definitely the landing gear. Also, these are only attached by one stud, so that does make them a little bit tricky to keep on. So again, another reason why it might not have passed that quality control. Anyway, the landing gear on the original set used these dark bluish grey large skis, one at the front and then 2 at the back, and that's absolutely fine, but they were directly under the main hull of the ship, which isn't accurate to how the ship looks in the series. These actually are meant to stick out, but finding a way of actually having those be load-bearing, I've tried it myself, it's very, very difficult. So the easier option, and the much more sensible option if you're just modding, is to actually make these the load-bearing legs. So these are just round 2x2 bricks in trans clear, so they actually support the weight of the vehicle, and these legs can just come up off the ground. They can also just pop down, and I think especially if you're at any kind of angle like this where you can barely see those trans clear bricks, it looks really good. Generally, things have been beefed up a little bit, the guns have been changed slightly, everything still opens how it was meant to. I've not gone with any interior mods so far, that is an option. The one thing you've got to be careful of is that it's way more difficult to open this with the leg actually attached, so the best thing to do is really to pop this off. It just comes off on a clip, and then you can slide that open as usual. So it's got exactly the same interior. I may go ahead and mod this at some point in the future. And in fact, the instructions from Brickvault come with 2 options, one for the original interior and one for a slightly modified version that has some things that have been moved about. Still not massively detailed, but definitely a bit of an improvement. So yeah, not a huge amount more to say on this, to be honest. I think overall it's just a really, really good build. It takes advantage of some of the design techniques that were in the original model, whilst improving a lot of them as well in order to create something that's a lot more authentic. I suppose the final thing to talk about is the canopy here. So this canopy is all in one piece, unlike the original, where this cone shape at the back was actually a separate part. And I'd say this is probably the weakest aspect of the entire build. So it's basically held on with these click hinges and then these clips. So that is a legitimate connection, but it's weaker than a clip to bar connection. So it means it comes off easily. The trouble being that this is then just held on there, on that Technic beam there, and it's very easy for it to come off, and also a little bit tricky to locate those clips into it. Can I do it on camera? Yes, I can. There we go. So there's a little bit of wiggle, but it mainly stays in place where it's meant to be. So yeah, all I would say is be careful with this. This isn't a play model anymore. That's the advantage that the original set has. You can tell because of things like the spring-loaded shooters have been completely removed. You know, it's not a play model. It is a display model, although it will take a little bit of swooshing around. So if you are in the market for a play version of this set, I would stick with the stock version. But if you do want one that looks a little bit more imposing and streamlined and impressive on display, and you either don't want to wait for the UCS version that's going to be coming out from LEGO at some point in the future, or Brickvault's own sort of Ultimate Collector's Series adjacent version, which is absolutely enormous and is minifigure scale, then I would say this is a very good compromise. Like I said in the intro, the extra parts cost me about £40, and that was including a lot of parts that I already had already, or some parts which don't need to necessarily be in the colours ascribed to them. So there are a lot of internal parts that you can actually just get away with doing in any colour. What I'll quickly just do, now that I've been rambling on for a while, is just quickly show you the leftover parts that came out of the original set, which don't get used in this version. And yeah, then you can make your own mind up as to whether or not this is a good investment or not. So here are those leftover parts. You do get some fairly large ones. These are those 6 diameter cylinder pieces that I was telling you about. I do have a plan for these actually in my Harry Potter Hogwarts mock, which new videos will be coming soon. And the rest of it, like I said, is quite a lot of dark bluish grey and a lot of other internal parts that you might be able to find some uses for in and around your collection. What I'll be doing is putting these back into my parts drawers and then using them hopefully in the future. So yeah, the parts that I needed cost me about £40. It may cost you more depending on how many pieces you have in your collection already. And the instructions were 25 if memory serves. I did say the amount at the beginning of the video, so if I've said something different now, what I said before was definitely correct. So yeah, overall, I've spent about £65 on this, plus the price of the original set, which isn't cheap in the first place. I would say that if you really want something that is a lot more authentic and looks much better on display, this really is the best deal. No idea how much that UCS Razor Crest is going to cost, probably quite a bit, and the Brickvault one is a lot. There are many other mocks out there. Like I said, I'm not sponsored or anything, it's just the place that I happen to go for these instructions. So if you want one at a reasonable cost, I would go for this. Obviously, you can design your own. It's LEGO, you can do what you want. But I do think that the Brickvault instructions were mostly very clear to read. Their service is very good. The instructions came through straight away. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with what I've got now, and it can take the pride of place in my little Star Wars display. So let's go pop it in there and take a look at it with all the other ships that I've got. I've been gradually rationalising my LEGO Star Wars collection so that it fits on one of these IKEA Ivar shelves, so I can make a little bit more space for other sets and other themes, and I think you'll agree that it looks like a very nice centrepiece for my eclectic Star Wars display. You've got models from the prequels, from the original trilogy, and from The Mandalorian, and I think the overall effect is pretty good, and I'm very happy with how things are looking so far. I might experiment a little bit like I have done in the past with some hanging displays or ships on stilts or stands or anything like that, so keep your eyes peeled for that in the future. Thank you for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed my look at this mock video. If you want to build one yourself, then you can go to Brickvault. Again, reiterating, I'm not sponsored, but that's where I got the instructions from. If you've enjoyed the video and like to see more, then please click subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be told when any future videos of mine come out. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'll do my best to get back to you, and I'll see you again very soon.